to Pine Tree Pulse. From the county to down east Maine. From Casco Bay to Mount Katahdin. We keep our fingers on the pulse of what's happening in Maine and across the nation. Brought to you by the Maine Policy Institute. Free markets, free people. Pine Tree Pulse begins now.
All right, back for another Pine Tree Pulse, a special edition here as we welcome into the podcast David Jones, who is a Republican candidate running for Governor of Maine in 2026. You and about 300 other people, David.
Well, it's quite a big field. I'd say the more the merrier. Bring it on. Let's toss around all the great ideas that are going to help save the state of Maine. I mean, a lot of good people running.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about, obviously, your personal history, what brought you to the point of running for governor, obviously what you want to do and everything. I do wonder, though, if we could start off just by speculating here a little bit. You know, I mentioned that there's a lot of people running, right? Do you think that means anything? Do you think that there's like a sense that this is a particularly good year for, say, Republicans to be running?
Well, I
think
because
my list had 20 people on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think all 20 run, obviously.
I think you're going to see about 10.
Yeah.
All right, but, it's an open seat. The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, has really made it brought out a lot of enthusiasm in people. So people feel like they have the answers. They want to be part of what's going on in our country. So it's a combination of things. But it being an open seat, I think, probably has the most bearing on.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Yeah, but I feel like it's just there have been open seats where fewer people have run. Right. I think it's just. I think there's a lot of fatigue about Janet Mills. There's a lot of fatigue about what you've seen the Democrats in Augusta doing for a long time, and I think that is sort of poking a lot of people to at least think about doing it.
Oh yeah, people really upset, as you saw this weekend, of the moose permit, moose lottery presentation. She couldn't even talk.
What was she thinking going there?
I don't know. It's definitely not her audience, and she's done everything in the world to alienate these folks. And so
I mean, she was genuinely surprised, didn't she?
Well, yeah, I think she said, "This is my town. I'm going to go ahead." Well, guess what? I'm sorry, you're not. We don't want you here. And they made it very clear. And it's sad that we've come to that point. But she's done so many things that have really irked the Maine voter that they don't want any part of her. So thank God she's not running. Too bad it didn't happen in the first term. Right?
Well, we'll get to Janet Mills, believe me, in this conversation. But I do want to start with how you got here, right? So you are running for governor now. You are one of these people that has had great success in the private sector. I think in your career and in your life, you've built stuff. That's kind of one of the big stories of you, I think. For those who may not be too familiar with you, perhaps, give me your story. Like, tell me a little bit about sort of how you arrived in this place.
Well, I was raised in Jersey, on the Jersey Shore, and I moved to Florida right out of high school. And right away I was working. I had already learned a trade. I was hanging drywall, and then I moved from drywall into carpentry and into concrete, and I next thing I know, I had 10 guys working for me, 20 guys, 50 guys, 100, and I got to almost, I think, 1,100 people on my payroll. So I built high rises, malls, shopping centers. I built tens of thousands of units in Florida. If you go to Florida, I built Williams Island, Fisher Island, Aventura, Disney Caribbean Beach Resort, Boca Raton Polo Club. I mean, these are just a few that pop in the head. But I built a lot of buildings, but I did it all with hard work. My father was a mechanic, bartender. My mom was a waitress. And they told me, you got to get a job in the factory with your father. And I said, I applaud what Dad does. He got me here, but I just want to be my own boss.
Chart your own path a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to be my own boss. And that's where I ended up. I mean, so it was a great run. When you're a kid that grows up and doesn't have any money, and next thing you know, you're building 30-story buildings and tower cranes in the air to have your name on it. You're like, how the hell did I do that? Right? Hard work. And I think that's the big thing with me, is that if I can do it, and I don't look at myself as anybody special. I just have a lot of, determination in my soul. I want to succeed, but I think everybody can, and I want to make sure they can. I just, so many times I lived in rural Maine. I don't know if you know that or not. I used to live up in Bingham. I restored that whole town. I bought all the old buildings, fixed them all up, authored a downtown redevelopment grant. had Angus King actually came to the town to see what I had done.
Not the third,
not
the
the
real
third.
Angus
No,
King.
no, the
Junior.
Angus, the first king. And so he came to town because he couldn't believe what I had done with the $400,000 grant. I made it a matching grant, and I told everybody if they got any money out of it, I says, I want you to dollar for dollar. And everybody ponied up, and then the next thing you know, the town was beautiful. And, that town, Bingham, used to be a service center town. Mm-hmm. And I figured if I'm going to live there, it was in total disrepair. I wanted it to be nice and presentable, and we did it. We did a great job. It was a lot of fun. So, life takes you, life is something that happens while you're making plans for the future. And I always look forward. I never look back. You're going to make mistakes. And I think people generally are afraid to take a chance. And that's not what made America great. What made America great is people taking chances, saying, okay, enough is enough. And, I want to be the best.
Why do you think that is? What changed about people that they're afraid to take those leaps and do that hard work and whatnot anymore?
Well, there's that song by Chubbawamba, I get knocked down, but I get up again.
I didn't think about talking about Chumbawamba today. That's not on my bingo card.
I get it. But, people get knocked down, and, failure is nothing to be afraid of. If you're a kid and you stick your finger in the light socket, you're going to get a shock. Well, guess what? You're not going to do it again, but you learn not to do that. So you got to be not afraid to take a chance. And to fail. And to fail. Yeah. Failure breeds success. And, people say, what? How do you? Because you learn lessons. They're life lessons. I didn't go to college. I went to, that Italian university called What's the Matter You? But no, I didn't go to any formal education. After I got out of high school, that was it for me. And I just started, building my life. And anyone can do it if they just make their mind up that that's what they want. And I think we talked before about this. People set unattainable goals. If you set a goal that's attainable, you're going to feel that feeling of accomplishment, and you're going to go to the next step. It's like a circle in life. You have a circle, and you're in the middle of that circle, and that circle is your boundary. You pierce through that circle, then the circle gets bigger, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger each time you overcome a problem. And if you go about life like that, then I think, a lot more people would try, and, they would, a lot more people would succeed. I just believe that that's been taken away. I think people don't think that they can do what they want to do.
Yeah. It's a tough question, on why people are like that.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, we look at. We see here in Maine, our kids leave.
Yeah. Mine is, by the way. Mine just graduated high school. He's going to Texas.
All my kids stayed. Mm-hmm. They went away for a little jaunt in New York City, which, by the way, was a mess today. But they went to New York. They saw the big city, and they're back in Maine. And all my grandkids are here as a result of it. And I'm glad. I want them to be part of
that. That was my experience too. I left for 10 years and came back. I grew up here.
You were down in D.C.
Yeah, it was. But I think, you start to have kids, you get married, your career's doing well or whatever. You start to ask questions about whether or not that rat race is exactly what you want. And there's a lot of things very appealing about Maine. Very, very appealing about Maine.
It's the most beautiful place in America. We got 3,400 miles of coastline, 30,500 square miles of land. We got mountains, we got rivers, we got streams, we got lakes, we got ponds, we got ocean. We have everything. We have change of seasons. Where sports are there. You can change activities, change the type of clothes you're wearing. I love the 4-season lifestyle. I lived in Florida for 25 years.
So this heat wave's nothing for you right now.
Nah, it's like believe me, I felt it yesterday.
Yeah, we all did.
Yesterday it was hot. It was 112 degrees when I got in my car. I think it's a little hot here.
Might be a bit much.
Good weather for a Gila monster, but not for David. But no, I'm used to the heat, and I obviously like being out in the sun. I'm always in the sun.
Mm-hmm. You get that from working a lot.
Yeah, I'm outside, and I own property all over the state that I do Airbnb with, and I do my real estate company, F.O. Bailey. And so I'm constantly going up and down the coast, in and out, east, west, north, south. And I've seen so much of the state, but you know what? As much as I've traveled, I still haven't seen this whole state. Yeah. There are so many things to see. And that's what I think the lure was for me. I'm a hunter. I love to hunt and fish. I'm not a very good fisherman, but I try.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, I give it a shot. I don't catch anything. I was just plagued with not being able to catch anything. But so and I came here to ski. I don't really ski that much anymore because I just don't want to deal with being laid up. I've had a few friends that continue to ski and they've been laid up.
There's a time to stop. Right?
I said, so I'll learn. I'll learn from their experience. But no, it's a beautiful state, and the people are great. The people here are fantastic. They really are. And I'm not just saying it because I'm running for office. I came here and I couldn't understand why I would pull out of my driveway, and people would wave at me, and they weren't flipping me off. They were waving at me.
Spoken like a true New Yorker.
Right. And if I wanted to cross the street, they stopped and let me cross and didn't try to run me over for 10 points. So it was just it was a different way of life.
So how did you arrive at the place where, you love Maine, you obviously have built a career, you've probably seen a lot of things over the years that have caused you great concern about what we're doing, the decisions we're making in government. What made you take the leap? Why are you going to be sitting? Well, why are you talking to me today? Right?
Well, look, I had kids. I have 6 kids. All right, 5 I fathered and 1 I adopted from Costa Rica. They were all at that younger age, and I wanted them to grow in kind of like that Mayberry RFD type atmosphere where they could go out on their bicycles, hang out with their friends, and not have to worry about something going wrong. And it was a really good move because if you live in Boca Raton, Florida, it's different. It's very plastic. A lot of people there have a lot of money, or even if they don't, they act as if they do, and they're buying the kids Mercedes and BMWs. Yeah. And I didn't want that for my children. And, so we came up, we bought a place up in Bryant Pond 41 years ago now. Yeah, 41 years ago. And it's a great compound. We bought it, back when, things were not that expensive.
Yeah.
And we would spend the entire summer, or my wife and kids would, and I was running a business, so I could only come up for a week or two, 10 days, whatever I could do. And I would come up a couple of times during the summer, but it became like, wow, I want to be here. Something just said to me, I want to live in Maine. And then one day I said, Nance, I want to move to Maine. No, you don't. And I said, yeah, I do. I said, I'm going to sell this house and I'm going to buy a house up there. And I flew up and I bought this beautiful property up in Emden, Maine. And I fell in love with 60 acres, 3/4 mile riverfront on the Kennebec, like a 10,000 square foot house. It was, I think I paid $375,000 for it.
What's it worth today? Oh my God.
Oh God,
Can't even imagine.
I can only imagine what it's worth. This house is built. It was a John Calvin Stevens home. It was built by James Leon Williams. He was the inventor of True Bite technology for dentures, and he was a dentist at the Queen of England, but he was born in Emden, Maine. So it was his house. And I bought it, and, it was, for me, it was like, panacea. What a place to be. And privacy and everything else that went along with it. And I just fell in love with the place, and we were here. Now,
so Mainer by choice.
Mainer by choice, yeah. I mean,
So you said 40 years ago?
I bought...
That's when you bought it. Yeah.
27 years ago, I bought that. 28 years ago.
And that was the
40 years ago, we did Bryant Pond.
Yeah.
And that was a family purchase. We all chipped in. All Nancy's, my wife is Nancy. We all chipped in together and bought this place, and just that was our place. But then I was up there. We're snowmobiling, we're skiing, I'm like hunting, I'm fishing. Why do I live in Boca Raton, Florida? All right. So I just came up, and I felt for me, it's the only place I want to be. Like anybody else, if you're, fairly successful and you got a couple of bucks in the bank, you can live anywhere you want. But I choose here, and I love it here. My kids now have definitely chosen here, and they have kids that are going into the school system, and that scares me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That scares me. I don't want somebody in schools to undo everything that we've done in our family to make us a family unit and teach the kids good values and put crazy ideas in their head. I don't want anybody to be confused in who they are. And so I have real concerns about what's being taught in schools.
You should
today.
be.
Yeah.
You should be concerned.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a real problem. And when you see some of these things that are going on and you think, why are we even having this conversation? Why are these things being discussed? I mean, like I'm 6 foot tall, and I decide to put a skirt on, and I can play basketball with the girls that are, 5.5 foot tall. I mean, or I can run track. I'm taller, my legs are longer. Whatever. I mean, we're just built differently, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. I have no problem with anybody being who they want to be, none whatsoever. Never have. You want to, whatever it is that you like, good, but don't jam it down my throat, and don't compromise, the work that other athletes are doing in the state or anywhere in this country. To be an athlete takes a lot of training. You played ball, didn't you?
Yeah, of course.
And so you're out there and you're working and you're throwing and throwing and throwing and trying to get your pitch down, do what you do, and then somebody comes along and just says, "Oh, sorry, I'm bigger and better."
It's almost a little bit like performance-enhancing drugs in some respects, right? It's it's an unfair competition at the end of the day.
So
right?
if a girl took testosterone, she would be eliminated, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, So for me, it's just not right. These kind of things are, just wrong. They go against everything in common sense reason. Just you wonder who the hell ever thought of this.
I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but there was 8 attempts at trying to do something about it in the legislature this year, and all of them died, which is interesting. I mean, you look at the Democratic majority in Mills and everything that they've been doing this year. To me, it strikes me as being very out of touch with what normal human beings think about stuff like this.
Well, for me, I think I believe it's a 90-10 issue.
Yeah.
And on the 10 that are, for that, I ask them, well, how do you justify it? What can you tell me that I'm missing? What part of that puzzle is David Jones not connecting with?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it just I
don't get very good answers.
I don't get any answers, right?
Well, they always, it's always inequality or arguments about that.
Yeah. Well, DEI, CRT. Come on. I mean, it's just when the head of the Department of Education says we're going to traditional learning is going to have to take a back seat. DEI and CRT are taking preference. I mean, we never even thought about that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm older than you. I'm 69 years old, and don't hold my youth against me. But we were raised. Guys are guys, girls are girls, and
well, it's kind of been how it's been for 100,000 years. Or
yeah,
so.
yeah. It's nothing new, right?
Well, you make a joke about being older than me, but it was like that when I was growing up too.
Yeah.
I graduated high school in 1999. So
99.
Yeah, so a little bit different. Well, you should see some of my employees in this
25
building.
years
Yeah, they weren't
difference.
even born yet. So.
Yeah, no. So look, America, has pretty much spoken, I think, on these issues.
Yeah.
Now, how do we? I don't want to disadvantage anyone who decides that they want to go down that path with their life. I think parental rights are number one. I don't think the schools have the right to hide anything from the parents. I think it's very wrong to do that. They're our kids, not theirs. They're entrusted during the course of the day to educate them. Now, educate them, fine. Teach them reading, writing, arithmetic, history, the things that matter in life. Then, all right, we're good. Teach them vocations. Let's teach them trades. But to
teaching them political opinions is different.
I was the kind of kid in school that was always in trouble. Imagine that. You probably can't picture that.
Oh, I can picture it.
Yeah. So I was
right there with you too, by the way. I was in the principal's office an awful lot.
Oh, Christ, I had a seat with my name on it.
Yeah.
But the bottom line for me is I never knew any one of my teachers' politics, ever. And history was a big subject for me. I always like history and I always like math. And because I still believe that, if you don't know history, it's going to repeat itself. And I had a teacher, I'll never forget him, God bless his soul, was Mr. McNabb, and he kind of took me under his wing because he knew I was one of those kids that could just, end up in big trouble. And, I hung out with the guy. Me and my buddies would go fishing with him. He was just a good guy. But, never once did he ever talk to me about politics.
It's funny. I went to the University of Maine, and I had a political science degree when I went there. For 90% of the professors that I had in my time there, I couldn't tell you what they thought either.
That's a good teacher.
Yeah.
Right? I mean...
And that's college, where you expect wacky stuff to happen.
Today we expect it, but before we didn't.
Yeah.
America's changed. And, this type of change I don't think is good change. America's... I've traveled all over the world. There's very few places in the world that I haven't been. It's easier for me to say where I haven't been than where I have been. And, every time I come back here to the United States, You want to kiss the ground I walk on. We have it made. It's so good. You know, I remember I was in Eastern Europe right after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Velvet Revolution in Prague, and I witnessed Bolsheviks and this and that and all this. It was amazing. They're pulling down the Stalin statues, and I thought, wow, you know, they fought for their freedom. It was a quiet fight, but they did it. The Soviet Union was weak, and they failed, and then they took over and split all these. And Czechoslovakia was one country, and then it became Czech Republic and Slovakia. Mm-hmm. Slovakia remained socialist, and Czech went capitalist. And I watched it, and I kept going back over the next, 3 or 4 years. And I remember one time I needed a computer. And, you know, if I was here in the United States, I order it today. It's there on my doorstep.
Right, 2 days.
The following day, right?
Yeah.
Right? It took.
Or you could order it in the Apple Store has it this afternoon. I actually just did that for my son going to college.
Yeah.
I literally ordered it, and we picked it up the same day.
Yeah, that's what we have. I mean, you flick your light switch, guess what? It comes on.
Yeah.
What powers the electricity?
Yeah.
All right? Fuels. And then I want to talk a little bit about that because there's a bill right now that they put into the House, fuel choice.
It just passed.
Did they pass it?
Yeah, they passed it.
Today?
Yep. It's on her desk now. Yep.
Yeah, it's on her desk.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, but
So she call her, by the way, because we don't know if she's going to sign it. She should, but
it
did pass
it was
both
a
houses.
12 vote majority, right?
Yep.
What I meant. Yeah, so I mean the idea that towns could come in and say after you spend $20,000-$30,000 putting in an energy efficient heating system that, well, hey, guess what? Your oil's done. No more oil. What do you do? How do you enforce it? They're going to tell the oil companies they can't deliver in their town?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is just one example of why I'm running for governor. I mean, I hear the things that they're making Maine a sanctuary state. The idea that they are anti-ICE. So are you anti-law? Do you want?
Yes. Yes.
They're
It's the
anti-law.
answer to
If you're
that, yeah,
anti-ICE, you're anti-law. You don't believe in the rule of law. And I think it's sad. You know, it's like all these revolutionaries. It's like everybody wants to put up signs, no King's Day, and I mean, really, if you got that much time in your hands, why don't you do something productive with your life? You know, why don't you do something that's going to help you, your family, help the state? There's a lot of people in this state that need help, and you look at the children that have been, I call it murder. It's they're 148, I think. Children have been murdered since Janet Mills became governor of Maine. And have she said one word about it?
No, she intentionally doesn't. She
Why?
stays out of it. Because it's embarrassing for her. That's why.
Yeah.
Because it's her Department of Health and Human Services who are supervising all this. And they're incompetent and they don't know what they're doing.
Well, they're not trained. They're putting social workers in places that they shouldn't be. They're not trained for the job. There's really no protocol for them to follow. They just do whatever their gut feeling is.
Well, yeah, but they're also, like, the people that are in charge of those departments are just lying to us. I remember
did you see that report that came out? I mean, saying that they had done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, no, it's like investigate yourself and tell us what a great job you're doing. Yeah. There was one, I think, maybe a year ago or so that they came out and said something to the effect of, like, we don't put kids in hotels anymore. And I got friends that do this for a living who are in hotels that night.
Really?
Like doing this kind of work with kids because they don't have other options. They don't know. They literally lie to us about what they're doing and they don't do. And it's funny, David, sorry I'm on a soapbox, but you look at the Bangor Daily News, the Press Herald, Sun Journal, all of the newspaper that exist here. They could investigate.
They should
investigate.
Yeah.
There should be FOAs going out everywhere.
They should. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I bet, and if they did, they'd find a whole bunch of things, and 2,000-word stories would be written exposing what's wrong inside the Department of. That's what they did when LePage was in office. They couldn't. They couldn't help themselves.
Did they ever?
Yeah,
they couldn't. Did you ever see a happy face picture of Paul when he was?
Not in every.
He would take the worst photo
right in the middle of him saying something, his mouth open. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that. The only true journalist I think right out there right now is Steve Robinson. I mean, he's doing a hell of a job at Maine Wire. I would encourage anybody out there to follow what he's got. He's a seeker of truth, and he's doing a good job.
Yeah, he is.
I mean, I think about that. He worked. Oh, it's so funny the circle of life there. But he was working as an intern at Ray Richardson's studio, and then he went down with Howie Carr. Then he come back and does Maine Wire. I mean, yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, but he's good. and he's serious, and he wants you to make up your own mind. He's going to tell you what's happening, which is rare. You're not going to usually see that, and then he's going to allow you to make up your own mind. Yeah, and I think that's special.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that's special about it is that it's filling the gap. They're not investigating stories. It does. It's finding things that they should have all along been doing, and they haven't been. And that the DHHS thing, to go back to it, is like it's one of the biggest scandals I can even imagine right now. I mean,
it's too big.
We all agree, don't we, that dead kids are a bad thing, and that if somebody's in charge of watching over to make sure something like that doesn't happen, and then it happens, that person's head should roll. Right?
Amen.
You shouldn't have that person leave and then replace them with their assistant, which is what they did.
Which is what they did. Exactly what they did when he resigned. When she resigned.
Yeah, we're gonna get rid of this problem, but the person who was working with him every day.
Yeah, the heir apparent is stepping up. But so you get more of the same. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and that's what they do. That's what they do, and that's why our government's ran.
And there's no accountability. They hide from accountability on it. It's one thing to make mistakes, but to not you mentioned she didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Why isn't she out there doing a press conference saying, these people have failed and I'm doing something about it? That would make her look, I think you'd like that, wouldn't you? I would like that. It's like somebody's in charge and you're going to hold people accountable for bad decisions and mistakes that they've made.
Where's transparency? Isn't that what they all run on?
The single least transparent governor who's ever been.
I was surprised she went to Farmington and tried to read the winners of the Moose Lottery.
She did threaten not to after she got booed.
And they said, it's fine, put it online, right? But that's a shame that we have a governor that's in that position. But she put herself there.
Yeah.
And it's not representative. We're supposed to have a representative form of government. We are a republic. People don't understand it. And how many of them actually have read the Constitution and understand what the Constitution means? We've talked a little bit about that before. But, the bottom line is that's a beautiful document. It was created for us, we the people. And we the people don't support it when we don't vote. And that's the big problem I think Maine and our country has. We don't get out to vote. People don't stop. And we have so much time to vote. We have 30 days prior to the day of election
really no excuse.
to go to stop. How many times everybody in the state of Maine drives past the town hall once in 30 days? And all you can do is swing in 2 minutes. Hi, my name is David Jones. This is where I live. And, I want an absentee ballot. Fill it out, sign it, seal it, hand it to them. You're done. Right? You've done your duty. It's your duty as a citizen of the United States and the state of Maine to vote. And if you don't vote, this is what we get.
You said in passing something about the people in New York having a little bit of a bad day today. To make your point that you're making right now, did you see how many people voted yesterday?
430,000.
Yeah, that's the dude who won, the Democratic Socialist, who's been in the country for like 6 years and is 33 years old.
And there's 11 or 12 million people.
He wants to nationalize grocery stores. I mean, the guy is. I mean, you want to talk about socialism?
He's a communist.
I think.
Look in the dictionary. What's the definition of socialism? It's the first step to communism.
Yeah.
All right. So bottom line is communism doesn't work. I've been in communist countries. I've watched it, and I can't believe how people are living like that.
And I wanted to ask you about this because you had mentioned the fall of the Soviet Union and what you saw in Eastern Europe and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about somebody like that winning in the United States in probably our most important city? In just a couple decades after that failure,
words
happened
can't
like
describe what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah.
But for that to happen in New York City, the Big Apple, the place where Donald Trump has lived his entire life, and has done amazing things in the city of New York. To have it in the hands now, maybe, of someone like that. Mm-hmm. I mean,
8.2 million people live in that city, and that's the city proper, right?
Yeah, but there's a total of like 11.
It's like 12 in the area,
12,
but like the city itself is 8.2, and 400,000 people just handed the keys to that guy.
Just said here.
Yeah, which is, I think, going to the point you were making about like people showing up. I mean, if normal human beings showed up to that election, that guy would not have won.
No, but they don't care.
Yeah.
And so, and with social media being so available, so prevalent in our society, it's not like you don't know. Because and they're spending money.
You have to actively try not to, right?
Yeah,
it's like I don't want to know.
You have to. I mean, because it's no matter what, your phone's ringing or you're beeping or vibrating or whatever it is, and so it's there. It's in your face. So people in Iraq after the war, they had to go ahead and dip their thumbs in purple ink,
Yeah.
right? And then they would walk out, and then the snipers would shoot them and kill them. Now they did their civic duty and they were killed doing it. We're not going to get killed here. All you got to do is take 20 minutes out of your day, once a year or whatever election is coming up or vote that's coming up, and do your civic duty. And we haven't taught that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with patriotism. There's nothing wrong with honoring the American flag. There's nothing wrong with saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, And there's definitely nothing wrong with saying the Lord's Prayer. It's a generic prayer to God, whatever religion you are. You believe in God. You believe in whoever your God is. So it's not like you're saying it's to Jesus Christ or whoever or Buddha or whoever you're in. But the bottom line is you believe in a God or multiple gods. So why not say the Lord's Prayer? I've been told, that I was like a Christian Nazi because I suggested it on air one day. I'll tell you a funny story. So I said that on air one day. And I go back to the office. A lot of time after I do the show with Ray, they'll, text me or, but this guy came into my office. And he's like, is David Jones here? I got a bone to pick with him. And I said, all right. He said, the girl at the front desk says, yeah, just a minute. He says, there's a guy at the front desk he wants to see. I said, send him back. I heard him. I could hear him in the office. And he says, you're like a Christian Nazi. I said, really? I go, why is that? He goes, well, you want to bring prayer back in the school. There's separation of church and state. It says in the Constitution. I said, can you show me where it says that?
Yeah.
All right, show me. Nobody can because it doesn't
it's not
exist.
in there.
All right. And so I said, have a seat, sit down. He goes, this is insane. What's happening with this Trump guy. I can't stand the guy. I said, you have your own opinion. I respect your opinion. I'm losing friends and family over this Trump guy. I says, well, if you're losing friends and family over your position on Trump, then they're probably not your friends, and then they've chosen not to be part of your family. I said, so I suggest you find new friends or family. I said, but I respect your opinion. He's looking at me kind of funny, like, really? I go, yeah. I says, listen.
Trying to figure out a little bit.
Yeah, right. And he says, this isn't going the way I wanted it to. I go.
I like you a little too much. What's going on here?
I go, why is that? He says, well, that's what he said. I like you. I said, well, what's not to like? I says, I like you too. I says, we might have differences of opinion on our policies and politics. I says, but you're an American. I love you. He says, I'm Jewish. I said, so what? Most of my friends are Jewish. I said, what's wrong with that? He goes, well, just I told you.
Well, you're a Christian Nazi.
Yeah, I'm a Christian Nazi. Yeah. I said, whatever. He says, this didn't work out the way I wanted it today. I said, well, I'm sorry. I said, I hope I answered your question.
Well, think about that for a minute, that he wanted it to to go bad.
Yeah, he wanted it.
Yeah.
And so he says, can I ask one thing from you? I said, sure. What is it? He said, can I have a hug? I said, absolutely, bring it in. And I gave the guy a hug. And so he walked out of the office scratching his head, wondering what just hit him. He had no idea, but I acknowledged him. I told him that I may not agree with him, but that he was entitled to his opinion. And his wound was healed, and he left liking me. Why can't we do that on a broader scale? Why do we always have to be at odds with one another?
I mean, isn't the answer self-interest? I mean, if you want power, which is when I watch what has been going on in Augusta for the last, especially 2 years, but 6.
Yeah,
it's about a bunch of people that are doing stuff to give themselves and keep power as much. They're leaning on it as much as possible.
Well, kings have done it for centuries.
I mean, I think one of the errors, in your way of thinking here, ultimately, is just that it sort of presupposes that people want to solve a problem. They want to get together and they want to find that catharsis, right? Normal voters do. Like regular people who are out here in the world do.
Yeah.
But those politicians that are voting on things in Augusta or Washington or whatever, it's all self-interest for them.
Power and money.
Yeah.
Power and money. It's a drive. I always say greed is that little troll that's in the back of your mind under the bridge who jumps up every once in a while and shows his evil head. So power is, people feed on power. I've never in my life ever abused the power positions I've been in. I've never held a political office. This is my first job interview, by the way. But I have been in positions to not help when I could have helped.
Right.
And I always chose to help. And I just think that everyone deserves the opportunity and the chance to realize the American dream. And I think I'd be a great vehicle for doing that. I think where I came from, when you come from nothing and you work your way through life, I think what you realize that the dream's here, and it's up to us to make it and to help other people realize their dreams. And there's nothing wrong with dreaming. Some of the biggest dreamers, Wright brothers, right? Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, look at the people that, if they didn't dream, any of these things, people have made that camera or built your desk. It was all a dream. All the air that's around it, it's all the dreams that other people had that they didn't work on or didn't realize. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of air out there, but there's also a lot of good things that came out of people's dreams. And I think that, as, a person that would be, helping make opportunity available, I think through private sector, of course. I don't think government's the answer. I always thought government's the problem. But, I would be a good steward to help the average man or woman, child, or anyone else who wants to try something. I've always encouraged my kids to be all they wanted to be. They wanted to go on a trip somewhere with school. I supported it, and I let them go. And, it's scary when you let your younger children out of the house, with somebody you don't know, but usually church events or something like that is what they went on. But as a result, I wasn't a helicopter dad.
Yeah.
I said, look, test the word. You get hurt, I'm here. I'm always here for you. And I think that they had a degree of comfort in that. And I think that if government could just get the hell out of the way and let people do what they want within reason, within the law, the guardrails are set up for life, and the Ten Commandments is another one that probably sticks in the head as, having been an altar boy, I was raised with that. And, so you have those things, they're guardrails. Now no one's perfect. I'm far from a perfect guy. I'm a guy, I probably made every mistake in the book, but I kept trying. Hank Aaron struck out more times in bat than Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth struck out more times before that. And did you ever think of him as a strikeout king?
Right.
He was a home run hitter. They were home run hitters. Why? They got up to the box, and they said, "Hey, I'm going to take this chance." And the Babe pointed out the wall, and he knocked it over. And so, it's just believing in yourself. And if you don't try it, you'll never know.
You'd mentioned government being part of the problem, and I know we've already talked about some policy stuff with the THHS, a little bit of education and some other things. But I'm looking at Augusta right now, and they just passed this Part 2 budget. And you and I talked about this a little bit this morning.
Yep, $11.6 million.
Yeah, actually, and I have to correct you. You've been saying 7.5 for LePage's budget. It was 7.1. That last budget was $7.1 billion.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
It was. I remember.
It was
I was there when he signed it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But that makes it even worse, though, is my point.
It's even worse.
You know what I mean? Like, it's an extra $500 million. So she goes from 7.1 to 11.6, and they're not done. There's a story in the Press Herald this morning about how they're going to come back and spend more money. So it's probably going to be like 11.8 by the time they're done.
I wouldn't be surprised if they cracked 12.
Yeah.
And, when I was a kid, $1 million was a lot of money. Now, $1 billion is and now we're looking at trillions. So, I think that what these two people are, nothing against drunken sailors of port, but they're spending money like drunken sailors in the port for a good time. Yeah. And they're spending it unnecessarily. I do not see how we got from, I'll use your 7.1 number, to $11.6 billion in 7 years. I don't see how we did it. Where in God's name did you decide to spend that money, and how did you determine that it's that much more expensive to run this state?
I can halfway answer that. I can, and it's a disappointing answer, but it's because they had the money. Like when COVID hit, right? You had all that federal backstop cash.
15.5,
an unbelievable amount of money.
$15.5 billion
that flowed into every level of government.
Yeah,
yeah, including the state, obviously. Yeah. So they had all this extra money, and that allowed them to not spend it here, and so they spent it somewhere else, and so the budget grew, right? Then after that started to kind of get pulled back a little bit when COVID was over, they had inflation money, because as soon as inflation starts spiking up to 9.2 or whatever it was percent, annually, all of a sudden people's incomes are going up to try to chase the increase in prices. You've got higher sales taxes. You've got higher real estate taxes. You've got higher everything taxes.
Labor costs.
And so they had more money. Like they had surpluses all the time. Like every 2 months, we were, new surpluses coming in. And they made a decision that a lot of other states didn't. Like New Hampshire didn't do this. A lot of the state Democratic states like Connecticut didn't make this decision. Connecticut.
Well, they almost went broke.
They did, but they cut taxes in this period.
Yeah.
Connecticut cut taxes.
They
right?
were on the verge of bankruptcy.
They were, and that's Daniel Malloy, who's now our chancellor of our University of Maine system. That's his fault. But my only point is
good behavior.
They got this slush fund, and they're like, okay, well, let's start picking things to spend money on, and so they just spent it all. They could have done structural reforms. They could have done tax
There's so much
relief.
they could have done. They could have
millions of
reduced
things.
debt. They could have. I mean, there's a lot of things they could have done. I don't know what's happened to our rating, where we are with that. If that's getting affected as a result of the amount of spending we're doing right now. Do you know?
It's been holding steady for the last few years, but we've been warned.
Yeah.
I know that much.
I remember seeing a warning, but I don't know if they actually.
They're like, it's still there, but you better figure some stuff out.
So, I mean, you're spending money, on a lot of things that I don't believe are necessary. And, as governor, I would love to sit down and literally lift up the hood on every little piece of paper, that rule and contract that was ever signed on behalf of the citizens of the state of Maine, see what it is that they've spent the money on, find out whether it's necessary or unnecessary, and get rid of all the unnecessary.
Is that like a Doge-like project? A little bit?
Totally. Listen, I call it Maine Doge. I think that the whole attempt there was great. It brought the attention to the things that I think were important, and I think we need to focus on this. What would be wrong with having a Maine Doge?
Nothing.
Wouldn't we want to know if they've misappropriated funds? Wouldn't we want to know if they violated the law by awarding the contracts to people without going through due process? I mean, there's so many what wouldn't we want to knows that I can go down here on a list. But, I can tell you that, people say, well, David Jones, what are you going to do about taxes? Well, in order to understand what you can do with taxes, you got to understand what the spending is and why we're spending it. And so we could find out what. I'm not going to make a promise like people. I'm like, I'm going to get rid of income tax tomorrow. Look, I would love to do nothing more than get rid of the income tax. New Hampshire has it. Florida has it. Why in the hell can they have it and we don't? All right. So what we have to do is we have to understand the spending. We got to curb the spending, and then at that point, believe me, the first thing I want to do is get rid of or lower the income tax here in the state of Maine. But I'm going to do it the right way, and I'm going to say, hey, listen, elect me governor of the state of Maine. I'm going to get rid of the income tax. Well, that would be my ultimate goal, no doubt about it. But in order to make that statement and know that I can do it, I have to lift up the hood under that and see everything that they've done in order to understand it. And listen, numbers are my game. I love numbers. My life's a spreadsheet. And I think that's what we do. We look at it, and I have some people that are volunteering that want to be part of this. And they're saying, look, we'll help you. We'll be right underneath the hood with you, David. And we will find out what it is that they've spent our money on. And then, you got to be serious about it. And we've got to have, legislature, behind us. And, you've got, we have a pretty good chance, I think, in this cycle, if everything remains the same, to, take the House, the Senate, and the gubernatorial
I was going to ask
race.
you that. So you feel optimistic about the political chances?
We're so close.
Yeah.
Especially in the House, right?
Yeah.
But, I think that people are fed up. I no matter where I go in the state, I don't care if they're Republican, Democrat, unenrolled, people are fed up. They just do not want to have more of the same. They want to have a Maine that they can love, cherish, and afford. And right now, I don't think we can afford it. Raise the income tax to 8.94%. Come on. You put taxes on ambulance rises.
They can afford
tax prescriptions, 70%, 70 cents per prescription. I mean, they're coming up with all these ideas on how to take more money out of our pockets. And, I've said it a million times. If you reach into your pocket and you hand somebody some money, make sure you're getting something of equal or greater value. Are we getting something of equal or greater value in what we do?
No, we absolutely haven't. I mean, I asked you the question this morning, if you feel all that different than that budget from LePage, which was $4 billion less than what we're spending now, right?
Yeah.
To me, life is very similar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a little bit more annoying because of the regulations and stuff like that. But I mean,
I haven't seen much change.
my life isn't a lot better.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
I mean,
The roads don't look that much better, do they?
No. The roads are horrible.
Yeah.
As I leave my house, I live on Blackshop Road in Falmouth, and it was pothole city. I literally had to drive down the middle of the road so I didn't get beat to death driving down. And I have a nice car, but you beat the car to death too. Yeah. And how many people are then excise taxes that they charge you on their car? Florida had that.
God. Jeez.
I mean, it's crazy.
It's
so
insane. Yeah.
it pays to drive a beater. Bottom line, all right, and because if you buy a nice car, you're getting penalized. You're buying a car that supposedly, we don't want cars to pollute. All right, so we want cars that are safe. We want to have an inspection sticker on that car. Got to make sure of that, right?
Yeah.
All right, and so now you do that, and you do your share in driving a nice car, and we're going to charge you for that.
Yeah, it's like basically punishing you for doing the very thing they want you to do.
Right, no good deed goes unpunished, right? I don't know. Matt, I've been around here a long time, and it just doesn't make sense to me where we're at.
It doesn't. And having lived other places too, I know you have the same experience that I probably do here. It's amazing to me how different it is here. I mean, it doesn't matter the level of government you're talking about. It's your local town and your property taxes that are absolutely destroying it. We're basically at the top of the list of the worst property taxes in the entire country. You're talking about the state and the income tax. We're basically at the top of that list. You're talking about the corporate tax rate. It doesn't matter. Pick something. They're
matter.
all bad.
It's all bad.
All bad.
Any tax is bad.
It is, but at least some places have like one bad tax and the rest they kind of give you a break on a little bit.
We have
Not
gas
here.
taxes. That money go into the road maintenance fund? And then it usually gets jerked out and put into the general fund and spent into something else, right? So if we, I think it's almost 14 cents a gallon.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a huge number.
So 14 cents a gallon. I burn up a lot of gas because I drive up and down the entire state of Maine, and it's a lot of money. And yet, where does it go? What do I see?
Yeah.
What do I see for it? And so they had an opportunity during her administration to do a great job with all the federal money that was flowing into the state. The roads were vacant during COVID. I mean, I was driving up and down the state. I was deemed essential. Right?
Did you get one of those passes?
Yeah,
I got a secret little thing because I did the radio.
Yeah,
and they gave me a little thing that says you're allowed to be on the road right now.
I was deemed essential. Yeah. Right. But I remember the roads could have all been fixed with not any cones put up and blocking traffic for 30 miles. And they had the money. They got a boatload of money. I don't know. Just to me, it seems like an abuse of power, for what they've done. They've done things that I just don't agree with.
Well, this last budget that they just passed, the biennial and then the part two budget, they spent something like, I think it was like $450 million extra dollars in DHHS. And going back to the kids for a minute, you're spending hundreds, almost $500 million more in the department that manages that, and more kids are dying. What is that money going towards?
Well, when they're not training the people they're putting in the field to do the job that they're hiring them for, then that's a problem because they go into these homes, they're making pretty bad decisions. I know of a couple of cases, and I'm friends with Bill Diamond as well, and we talk about the kids in particular. But when you put able-bodied people on care and they're under administration of the state, and I heard of one that I couldn't believe it. The girl was a kleptomaniac. Right, and so they paid her $1,100 a month not to steal. Do you think she didn't steal?
Of course not.
Now, look, and I think it's pretty true because it was her brother that told me that was going on. So, I just think when you have people administering these agencies that don't have the qualifications, and, if they don't have they shouldn't be. This isn't like a popularity contest. We're talking about spending taxpayer dollars on programs that are supposed to help people who needed help. And we're taking money that should have gone to those that are help and giving it to those that should not get it. Then the ones that need it are not.
And they're in front of the line. They're in front of the line, which is the nutty thing.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And so immigration. Hey, look, I'm Italian. My grandparents came from Italy. My grandfather came here legally through Ellis Island. He raised 13 kids, right? And he had 13 children and never took a penny from anybody. He said to me the happiest day of his life was when he took the oath to be an American citizen in English. So I'm not against immigration. I'm against illegal immigration, and I'm against giving people money for nothing. Giuliani years ago did workfare for welfare. I mean, if you're able-bodied, able-minded, and you're getting money, then you should do what you can. And then, the way the programs are set up, it's either like an all or nothing thing. If they earn a little bit more than the whatever amount of money is that they're allowed to earn, then they lose everything. Instead of stair-stepping them out so they become self-sufficient and they have the opportunity to better themselves and become their own person and instill the pride in that person, they'd rather rob the pride from them and say, well, no, you can't work there. You're going to get paid too much money and you're going to lose your benefits.
Yeah.
Is that the way it's supposed to work?
Doesn't make much sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, so, in construction, when I had guys working for me, I had good guys, I had bad guys, and a lot of people, though, I took from, they were in trouble in life, and I put them on the workforce, and I gave them a chance, just like I was given the chance. I was given that opportunity. And, they appreciate it. And look, the success rate isn't 100%. If you get 10 guys, you might get 5, and that's a pretty good rate, right? But normally 3 or 4 that would actually...
You get anybody, though. It's a win for you. It's a win for them.
It's a win-win, yeah. I mean, one, you had loyalty, and they trusted you, and they looked up to you, and then they did a better job. But then they had pride. People have to have pride in what they do. Look, I'm 69 years old. I have the ability to just about... I have a lot of skills, but why do I have those skills? I can do plumbing. I could do electrical. I could frame a house. I could build a high rise. I mean, I taught myself how to do that because I wanted to learn. I wanted to better myself. So I think if we just bring that into people.
Isn't that the failure of the welfare system, though? I mean,
that's the failure.
I'm going back to even when LePage was elected back in 2010. That was obviously like his big issue that he campaigned on, and everybody in Maine understood it because we've all seen it. It's like you see family members or friends that have been trapped in it because
generational.
Entire
Generational.
families with multiple, grandkids and stuff like that are all trapped in it. And the trap is that you are given just enough to feel sort of not comfortable is not the right word, right? But you're not destitute. There's nothing about your life that is like on the edge of the precipice of absolute disaster anymore. But that robs you of a lot of the motivation if it's just like that forever. If they keep you in that place forever, right? You got to have something that moves you up into self-sufficiency, working, building something, etc.
Well, it's like when someone's an alcoholic or a drug abuser, they have a 12-step plan. Well, why don't we have a 12-step plan in the welfare system? Why don't we not? Why don't we?
That might be the best idea you've said all day. Seriously, that's
I mean, honestly, it needs to be stair-step. I've had some people who worked with me that wanted to kill me. All right. But then I've had people who come back and thank me years later because I made them what they are. I gave them opportunity. They made them what they are. I just gave them the opportunity and I helped them and I answered their questions and I was there when they needed me. So, a 12-step program. That's a great idea. Yeah. And just let's.
But things that incentivize you to be active and
like
get
I
skills
was saying
and work.
In the beginning of the conversation, you attainable goals. All right. And then you build on that and pride. I mean,
But how do you do that in a place like Maine, though? Because with what LePage did, right? I mean, he attacked that problem head on, and might not have quite got the stair step thing that you're talking about, although we talked about it all the time. But he did get a time limit. He did get some restrictions on eligibility for things like Medicaid and whatnot, and it really worked. It saved the state a lot of money. It also got people working. It got people going. And then Janet Mills gets elected, and snap of a finger, all of it's gone.
I put another 128,000 people on the.
She's bragging about dependency.
Yeah, I mean, so those who give it can take it. All right, and so you just got to be really careful. When you're doing this with people's lives, and that's what and the people who are the stewards of it really aren't good at it. All right, so you have to really think about who is this person that's going to administrate this. How are they going to do it? We're going to train them. This is what we want done. And the one thing about the way the program's set up now, is that it's all or nothing. So they go for all, and then they have a job with the black market economy. You think they're not working to make ends meet? Because they have to put.
They're doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they're out in the woods chopping lumber. They're out working on cars. They're out framing houses. But and I understand they have to survive. But the government has told them, look, if we find out, then they don't care. They got the money, right? And so you have to be really careful about what you do with people's lives. And I say motivate them, give them pride, let them say, hey, here's your opportunity. That's what happened to me. Now, I had a guy, I'll never forget him as long as I live, rest in peace, Richard Siemens, down in Boca Raton. I pulled up to this big sand lot in Delray Beach, and he was standing there looking at it, and I pulled over, and I could say had started putting a road in. And I told him who I was. He says, well, do you think you could do this? I said, yeah. He says, go ahead. He gave me the chance. I went ahead, and I did it. And then it built on that, and I ended up doing $25 million worth of work for him over the years, and he became like a mentor. He always said to me, don't repeat, I heard you the first time. So that sits in with me, because if you have someone say that to you that many times as he would, I heard you the first time, David, right? And so, you just... it's how you handle people. Yeah. And I just think they're handling them wrong at DHHS. There's so much I think
top to bottom. Everything is handled wrong.
Yeah. Well, I know, but that's a big problem.
Well, it's the biggest department.
The biggest, biggest expenditure, I think, out there. And education, what are our kids getting? What are they getting for an education today?
Not a terribly good one.
No.
I mean, you look at the report cards statistics. Every year that goes by,
do they get report cards anymore?
No, I'm talking about the nation's report card that says, how are your state doing?
Because everybody has to get a trophy, right? But,
yeah.
I mean, and the idea that the schools have talked about getting rid of valedictorian. I mean,
mine doesn't have one. Yeah. Our high school doesn't have one.
Think about that.
I did, because it made me very angry.
It should make you angry because
my kid killed himself to get really, really good grades, and I doubt he would have been the valedictorian, but he was at least up there somewhere.
Yeah,
and to not have
What's
anybody
wrong
on
with a ranking of effort. It's like you only get out
because
of life
it would make people feel bad.
Look,
that they're
I'm
not
sorry.
The
Maybe if you don't, I felt bad when I was a kid, and you know what? That made me work.
Yeah, it's a powerful motivator.
It's a motivator, right? So if you say, "Oh, sorry," we're going to give you, David, the same thing that everybody else gets, whether you work hard or not. Well, why would I work?
Yeah.
Why would I try and better myself? So I think failure, like I said, breeds success, and I always use the baseball analogy, and so many other things in life where you just look at it and you say, you have to fail.
Yeah.
Because if you don't fail, you don't succeed. You got to try. You got to try. And Maine's not, I don't think we're trying. What we're trying to do is get as many people as we can to get on the government dole and go to a single payer system and turn this into California. I don't want this to be California. I don't live in California. I live in Maine, and Maine has pride. And I want the people in Maine to have pride, period. All right, and the only way they're going to do is we remove the hamstring, get rid of all the obstacles in their life, and say, here, these rules no longer apply. Go for it.
And then see what they can do.
I mean, look what they do to lobstermen. If they don't have a high school education, they can't get a
licensing and stuff.
Yeah. Now think about that. Those young men and women that work on lobster boats have been on that lobster boat with their mom, their dad, their aunt, their uncle forever. Their families have been fishing on these waters forever. I guarantee you, have forgotten more about the water sciences than the people who go to school for it. And yet they can't get a license to be a lobsterman because they didn't graduate high school. Yep. They have the ability, but so they got to work under somebody. I mean, they work under somebody else's license. There's,
it's a complicated and very difficult to navigate system that makes it less likely people do it.
Yeah. But and the fishermen of Maine. What when you think of Maine, what do you think about?
I would say lobster, lumber, and blueberries,
and moose,
and moose. Right? Yeah.
That's Maine. But here we have a generational business that now is going to hell in a handbasket because of the rules and regulations put in by politicians.
Yeah,
and they're wrong.
All right, so before we wrap up and go here, obviously you're in a political contest right now.
Sure.
And there's
a job interview.
Yeah. And there's stages to this, right? So you're in the Republican primary now.
Correct.
Then you're going to take on, in the fall, whoever the Democratic nominee is, plus apparently an independent, too. Rick Bennett just announcing yesterday that he's going to be running there. And there's no primary for that, so he's just in.
He's just in.
He's just in. Can you handicap this a little bit for me? Like, as you see the field over there with the Democrats, what do you see?
Well, I think it's going to be Hannah Pingree. I don't know. She's been groomed by Janet to be in that office, and she was the go-to gal for her on so many things. Yeah. So I think if
So there's no legs to the Troy Jackson thing. There's no legs to the
not after the other day. I mean, just walking. Did you see him in the parade?
Oh yeah. Yeah, nice picture. Yeah, with the little glasses on.
I mean, will somebody do anything they can to get elected? I would never do that.
Did you see his little thing that he recorded? I think it was today. No, it must have been because it was about New York.
Yeah.
And he was beyond excited. He was thrilled.
Really?
Oh,
well, he's got Bernie
Sanders.
Bernie Sanders in his pocket, right? I mean, come on. So does Maine want a Troy Jackson socialist who will do or say anything to become the governor? And what's his motivation for being governor? All right. So Hannah Pingree, you got these dynasties, the Kings and the Pingrees, right? Shanabellas,
there's also Jonathan Bush that might end up in your.
That's a dynasty on our side,
it's
right?
A different dynasty.
Yeah. So we've got on that side. I my feeling is that when I win the primary, and I think I could and will, that my opponent would be Hannah Pingree. But on our side, so like you just mentioned, we have Jonathan Bush, and I like Jonathan. He's a good guy, but we'll see what he does. Yeah, right. You have Bobby Charles, right? Yeah, that's fine. Bring it on.
Jim Libby's in. He was
Jim Libby.
Here,
he's running Clean Elections Act. I don't know how any Republican can run as
that's a tough
elections.
sell. Yeah, it is a tough.
I mean, honestly, I don't think it's right as welfare for politicians. But so that's that.
But there's a bunch of people that haven't announced that are lurking.
Yeah, no, I look at them. I mean, there's Sean Moody. So I talked to Poliquin yesterday, and I don't think he's.
I don't think he's doing it.
No.
But you got like the Garrett Masons of the world.
Garrett, I'm friends with Garrett. And I'd be surprised if he did, but maybe I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Well, who knows?
I'd be surprised if he didn't. Actually, I feel like he's going to do it.
I don't know. I like Garrett.
I don't have any inside information. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, I talk. I keep in touch
the
with
wind
Garrett.
is blowing out there, and it just feels like he is.
Yeah, but he's got such a good position in life right now.
I wouldn't do it. I'm not saying I'd do it.
I'd wait. He's young enough that he can wait and do anything. And then that Owen McCarthy.
Yep, he just joined. Yep.
He just joined. And then the Wessel. And so there's a few of them.
They're kicking around.
Laura Libby, we can't forget Laurel.
Well, she led the one poll that's been done, which is just a name ID poll. Obviously, it means nothing, but she was on top of it.
She was on top of that trans issue that and that's a tough issue. I just feel for those kids that are confused like that, and I don't think we should take advantage of them or put them in the spotlight. But they are dealing with whatever it is in their head that's going on. But I would just think it would be really sad if something happened, or a couple of guys who decided to do something stupid, or I just don't like that. Well, I have gay friends. I mean, we talk about it all the time. They don't identify with a lot of this stuff, and they have sons and kids they've adopted or raised, and they're all normal people and great people. So, but I think up to age 18, it's up to parents. Right? The schools stay the hell out of it. Leave us alone. Don't be putting ideas in my kids' head. Teach the subject you're there to teach. Mm-hmm. That's it. But to get back to the field, I mean, we have a lot of really good people running, and may the best man or woman win. If I win, great. Obviously, I'm running for governor because I think I do a great job. But if someone else is better, have at it.
It's kind of refreshing to hear, because usually when you have a candidate talking to them, they try to do the posturing thing, like when I win and everything. And you think you hope you will. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't run if you didn't think you could.
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't run if I didn't think I could win.
But you're acknowledging reality. I mean, come on, anybody could win or lose anything.
Do we have a crystal ball? Do we know what's going to happen? It's weeks or lifetimes in the politics, right? And I've seen it so many times over the years, as watching it. So I think that look, Maine needs someone to stand up that's going to do what Mainers want. I'm the only guy I've talked to that I know who could do it.
That's a good selling point.
It just for
Well,
me.
you said yourself at the very beginning of our conversation, you got to believe in yourself. You got to actually think that you got something to offer and you can do. I mean, that's pretty much what you just said there.
Well,
you think you can do the job that's needed to be done.
I know a good idea when I see it. I know a bad idea when I see it. I know what it's like to make good decisions. I know what it's like to make a bad decision. And so good people, smart people surround themselves with people that are smarter than them in the areas that are their weaknesses. And I'm not one to sit there and say David Jones knows it all. But David Jones listens, and David Jones continually learns. I don't think I know it all. And I know that I would find people that were good and great at their positions. And that would help me be a better governor for the people of the state of Maine.
So as we wrap things up here, make sure that people know how to help you. Because if you're running for governor, you need people to give you money, volunteer for your campaigns, talk about you, post on social media, do all the things. So I know you have a website now.
Yeah, so we have a website. It's jones2026.com. It's up and running. You can donate right on that page. We're up and running. I tell people all the time, there's two things you need when you run for office, and especially a statewide office. It's votes. And we want all your votes, right? And money. Mm-hmm. Money is the tool that makes sure that the voice gets out there and we do the job that we have to do to compete with the people we want to make sure do not win. And so, we're in the campaign. We're raising money now. And we're doing pretty good at it. I'm very happy with the generosity of a lot of the people I've spoken to already. We just started like 10, 12 days ago raising money. And it's really tallied up pretty good. And so I hope our first report is good and then or great, because we want to make Maine great again. You can call me anytime. Yeah. My phone rings 24/7, 365. It's 207-650-3455. You can email me at david@jones2026.com. And I'm always there. If I don't call you right back, if I'm not there, when the phone rings, I promise you I will call you back without a doubt. I always return my calls. I'm in the real estate business. If we don't answer the call, we don't get the deal.
Indeed.
All right. So,
well, David Jones, been a great pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
I really enjoyed myself. A good conversation. I could talk politics all day long.
Yeah, we could do this for 5 hours.
Right.
Sure.
It's like,
keep going.
Where do you go? There's so much, and yet they've given us so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'd say let's bring it on. Let's win in 2026. Hopefully it's David. I'd love to be your governor.
Yeah.
But if not, let's elect the person that's going to do the job.
That's a great sentiment to end with. Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it. And that's it for us on the Pine Tree Pulse this week. We will see you guys again next time around.
Sounds good.
This has been Pine Tree Pulse, disrupting the Maine political machine, one podcast at a time. Visit MainePolicy.org to learn more, or follow the Maine Policy Institute on social media. Thanks for listening, and make sure to join us again next time.